Hi, Peter Mouget, James Kaufman, and Chris Paulos from Levin, Papantonio out of our Whistleblower or Business Tort Fraud section. And we're here today to talk about why a whistleblower is important and what steps you need to go through if you're sitting wondering, do I have a whistleblower claim? How do I report fraud against the federal government or a state agency? And how do I go about doing that? And we're going to give you just a series of quick questions that you can ask yourself to determine whether or not you have fraud to report overcharging of our federal government. Let me turn it over to Chris to kind of walk the viewer through what quick sequential steps they can ask about or answer about whether or not they have fraud to report.
Well, the first question, Peter, of course, is the person aware of any fraudulent billing practices or fraudulent conduct by the company in which they work or of which they're aware? Does the company undertake any sort of business practice that could be false or misleading to the consumers of its products or services? Now, if that answer to that question is yes, the next question would be, are any of the consumers of those products or services a government or state, local, federal agency that consumes or purchases those particular goods or services? And then also a good question for someone to ask is, if it's not a government agency that's directly receiving the goods or services, are the goods or services that the company is providing being used by whoever is purchasing them in turn on the government? So are you selling a good or service to a company that then turns around, repackages that good or service, and applies it to the federal government, the local government, maybe in your community? Now, if the answers to those questions are yes, it's very likely that then you may have an actionable false claim or qui tam case on your hands. What I would suggest then is that they immediately contact a qualified and experienced qui tam attorney to let them investigate the case to see if it's something that falls under the purview of the federal statutes or even the state statutes. And even some local municipalities have enacted their own micro whistleblower laws to protect themselves from these types of frauds.
So the first key question obviously is, do I have fraud to report? And the next step is against a federal or state agency. But what I think one thing that's important that most people don't know is the first purchaser doesn't have to be a state or federal government. It can just be down the food chain at some point in time that the ultimate end user of that product or service is the federal government or state agency. Is that?
That's correct. And I think it's really important for our viewers to understand as well is that they don't need to have a smoking gun of fraudulent conduct in order to prove their case. That certainly helps, that makes the case stronger, but if they have or suspect that a particular business practice is fraudulent or false, and that could simply just be the tip of the iceberg of this conduct by this corporation, that it's important to at least allow a experienced and qualified attorney to look at the facts to see if this is something that A, the federal government or the local government would be interested in pursuing, or B, actually fits underneath some of the laws in which these cases can be brought.
So since 1986, over $13 billion have been collected under the Whistleblower Acts, and the whistleblower or the relator has put a significant portion of that into their pocket under the reward program, almost $4 billion. So if you have fraud to report, as Chris mentioned, make sure you identify a lawyer that has good, strong relationships with the right U.S. attorneys. Make sure that somebody has an understanding of the claims being brought, and you can ask yourself a series of quick 3-4 questions and start delving into those from there, because there are significant protections under both federal and state acts for whistleblowers, and the federal government and our state governments have made it very, very lucrative, very rewarding for whistleblowers to bring to the attention of the fraud to both the federal and state government.